In this video, the learning target is I can analyze a set of data using mean, median, mode, and range. Our essential question, what measures can we use to discuss the center of a data set? We have 4 math practice standards, 1, 2, 6, and 7, and we have several key terms, so pay close attention as I may say some things, but they aren't necessarily written down. The first term is statistics, and that happens to be the collecting and analyzing of data in large amounts. Then we move on to the word data, and those are values. It could be numbers, it could be measurements, it could be counting things, rating things, but they're gathered to answer questions. The mean is basically the average of a set of numbers. Some people like to remember the mean by saying, the mean old teacher gave me my average. Our next term, median, and that is the number that is the midpoint or the middle of a set of data. Now, it's very important with median that you have your numbers in order least to greatest so that you can find the true midpoint of the data set. The next term is mode. And you can see that in the word, I underlined the M and the O. And the reason I did that, you'll see in a minute. It says the mode is the value that occurs most often. And you can see I underlined the M and the O for most often. That's the way a lot of people like to remember mode. M-O, most often. Range, that is the difference. And I underlined difference because you actually have to do a subtraction problem. That is the difference in the highest and the lowest numbers. Students often make the mistake of just writing down these numbers go from 0 to 130, but they don't actually find the difference in those two numbers. The next term can go by a couple of names. It can be called a line plot or a dot plot, and it is simply a way to organize data along a number line where the symbol above the number, could be an X, could be a Y, could be a dot, could be a star, anything, is going to tell how often a number or a value is used. And then our last term is measures of center, and that is establishes a central location in the data set. Where is the middle of the data set? It goes real well with the median. We only have one example in our video today, and that example is using a dot plot. Excuse me here while I focus in a little bit better. And we're going to use that dot plot or that line plot, and we're going to answer the following questions. We want to know how many students are in the data set, what are the mean and the median, what do these values mean, and how do they compare, and number 3, what is the range? What does this value mean? Now, if you are trying to quiz yourself to see if you could answer some of these things on your own, you'd want to pause your video now. If not, you can follow along with me and we will go through the data. If you look over at the graph or the plot, you can see that it has a title underneath that is called the 6 Trait Writing Rubric Scores for Organization. And that basically means there are 6 scores that you could earn for your organization in this particular rubric. They do go from 0 to 6, and you can see I used dots to represent the students who scored a certain number. So if I want to know how many students are in the data set, all I'm going to do is simply count the number of dots. And I have a good memory of how many dots I put there, and I can tell you that there are 21 students in the data set. Now moving on to question number 2, what are the mean and the median? That first thing there, the mean, remember that's the average. And when you're looking to find the average of something, you take the number of values or numbers or whatever that you have, which is our 21, and we divide it by how many different things I was looking at. So I have 6 traits that I was looking at. So I would actually divide 21 by 6. When I do that, it doesn't come out to be a nice even number, but that's okay. Oops, about to lose my board. The mean is 3 5/10 or 3 1/2. Now, you might ask yourself, what does that mean? who cares what that 3.5 is? Basically, what that is telling me is that if all those values were spread out evenly, that every student would have averaged a 3.5 on their organization. Then we move on to our median. That is our middle number. Okay, and in our median, there are lots of ways that you could do this. Remember, I said it needed to be organized from least to greatest. In this case, if I wanted to write it all out, I could have 1 0, 2 1s, 3 2s, 6 3s, 4 4s, 3 5s, and 2 6s. Or I could work backwards, sort of marking out the dots as I come across them until I get to the one that's right in the middle. And in this case, the one that would be right in the middle would be a 3. And what that's going to tell me is that 50%, because the median is half, 50% of the students scored 3 or higher, and 50% scored 3 or lower. Because if you stretched everything out, you would see that 3 that is the middle, there are some 3s on either side of it. Now, how do those two compare? They're actually fairly close to one another. And when that happens, that means that you've got a nice representation of your data. It's not skewed, which is a term you'll hear often, and it's not got a lot of really high numbers or really low numbers. They're nicely spread apart. All right, for the third question, what is the range? And remember, we said that is the difference between the highest and the lowest values. Well, I could have scored a 6, or I could have scored a 0. The difference in 6 and 0 is 6. So the range is 6. What is that value going to mean? It just basically means that there is a variation of 6 points in what somebody could have scored.